Hi, welcome here to Distillique, where today we're talking about training, online training specifically, and specifically our W5 High Brix Raw Material course. Now, that's a very big bit of a mouthful of a name, High Brix Raw Material course. Now, the W5 course used to be known as our Light and Dark Rum course. The reason why we changed the name is to make it a bit more encompassing, because the techniques that we address in the W5 course are not unique to rum production. It is basically techniques that you would benefit from learning or knowing about if you're working with any raw material that has a high Brix content. Now, this would be raw materials like honey, maple syrup, any syrup for that matter, concentrated sugar syrups like invert sugars, and of course then molasses for rum production. We also handle cane juice in this course, purely because it links in with rum. Although cane juice is not considered to be a high Brix raw material, the Brix content or sugar content is less than that of most grape varietals, but because it falls in with rum, cane juice as a raw material is also discussed in this W5 course. Now, the W5 course has a prerequisite, and the prerequisite course that you have to do before you can do W5 is C1 Introduction to Distilling. Our C1 Introduction to Distilling course is kind of our foundation course, where we handle the basics of distilling, including things like safety, the different product categories, or the broader scheme of distilled spirits, the categories of spirits that we get, the basic principles of distilling, as well as legal home distilling in South Africa. Unique to South Africa, our situation here being that the home distilling is legal under certain circumstances, being permits and legal stills. But then the most important categories or sections of the C1 Introduction to Distilling course is the fermentation, distillation, and spirit enhancement sections, where we cover everything that you need to know about the basics of fermentation, distillation, and then the different spirit enhancement techniques, which is dilution, airing and evaporation, flavoring, transformation, and so on and so forth. After you've done C1 Introduction to Distilling, we then take that information and we build on that in W5, as we do in all our other W courses as well. Now, in W5, as I've said, we focus on everything to do with high Brix raw material spirits, the unique skill sets that you need in order to work with these raw materials. Now, yes, the focus is very much on rum. About 95% of the course focuses exclusively on rum, because that's the best known product category when it comes to high Brix raw materials. So we do the history of rum, the techniques to make rum, we talk about dunder and everything else. So there's a lot of rum-based information in there. But the master principles that we deal with in this course, and all of our courses has a or sometimes more than one master principle. The master principle is a unique skill set that deals that something is unique to that spirit category or that raw material category. And the idea is that the more courses you do, the better all-round distiller you become, because you've mastered more of these master principles. Now, the master principle we focus on with high Brix raw materials is not a very fun one, but it is a very necessary one, and that is sugar calculations. Being able to work with sugar sources where we're dealing with fermentable and non-fermentable compounds. In the case of molasses, not all the content of molasses is fermentable. Where we're dealing with a Brix reading on sugar or on a fruit juice, we know if it's 50 Brix, that's 50 Brix fermentable sugars. In the case of molasses, however, we're dealing maybe with 80 Brix, and depending on the grade of that molasses, that 80 Brix might be 79% fermentable, 60% fermentable, 40% fermentable, or even less. Now, once you've done a C1 course, you will understand why this can be challenging when we're looking at things like alcohol tolerance of yeast, Brix tolerance of yeast, yield calculations, recovery rate calculations, and so forth. It becomes very important to know what you are dealing with, what your readings should be, your starting SG and final SG, target SG, and so forth, and how you're going to get the most out of this raw material. Also, if you're combining different raw materials, as a home distiller, you might be wanting to increase your yield by adding sugar to the molasses. How do you calculate that to make sure you don't kill your yeast because you've exceeded the Brix tolerance, or maybe wasted sugar because you've just got too much sugar in that fermentation? So all of these skills is covered in that course. We also look at fractional distillation, which is technically speaking, the master principle of the W1 fruit-based spirits course, but fractional distillation very much applies to rum production as well, to go looking for those flavors and aromas hiding in the tails of our distillate. When many distillers would stop when they get to the tails, we teach you how to distill into the tails, but in a fractional way, taking off cuts in the tails and then selectively blending those tails back to naturally enhance the flavor and aroma profile of the spirits, but also to gain mouthfeel and lingering aftertaste, the holy grails of any craft or home distiller, to get that naturally without having to add in things like glycerin, sugar, and all those cheap methods of making a more palatable spirits. So that is our W5 High Brix raw material course.